Her cruel mate abandoned her during the moon hunt. Then the Alpha King arrived with his wolves. The night of the moon hunt was sacred to the Silverfang pack. Once every year, when the moon rose full and silver over the northern forests, every wolf in the pack shifted and ran free together. It was supposed to be a night of unity, of trust, of mates running side by side under the open sky. Elena had waited for this night with quiet hope, telling herself that maybe, just maybe, things between her and her mate would be different once they were both free in their wolf forms, away from the pack house and its watching eyes. She was wrong. The moment the hunting horn sounded across the valley, Damon shifted into his wolf form without a single glance in her direction. His dark grey fur caught the moonlight for only a second before he vanished into the tree line, moving fast, moving alone. Elena stood frozen at the pack border, her own half-shift trembling at her fingertips, claws digging into the cold earth. She had expected many things from her mate over the past year, but she had never quite gotten used to this particular kind of pain, the pain of being left behind in front of everyone. And everyone had seen it. She could feel their eyes on her back as she finally forced herself to shift and follow, if only to save face. The whispers had already begun to spread through the pack like smoke curling from a dying fire. The beta's mate, abandoned again. Some pitied her. Others seemed almost pleased, as though her humiliation confirmed something they had always believed about her, that she was too weak, too human in her blood, never truly worthy of standing beside a wolf like Damon. Elena had been born half human, half wolf, a rare and often mistrusted bloodline among the packs. When she had been chosen as Damon's fated mate, she had believed, foolishly, that fate itself would be enough to make him love her. But fate did not control hearts, and Damon had made his feelings clear from the very first day of their bonding ceremony. He had wanted a mate of pure wolf blood, someone who could stand at his side as a true partner in strength and status. Instead, he had gotten her, and he had spent every day since reminding her of his disappointment in small, cutting ways. Tonight had simply been the cruelest reminder yet. Elena ran through the forest, her paws light against the frost-covered ground, her breath fogging in front of her muzzle. She told herself she was following the pack, following the hunt, but the truth was, she had no real direction. She only wanted to get far enough away that no one would see the tears that threatened to fall, even in her wolf form. She ran for what felt like hours. The trees grew taller and stranger around her, the familiar scent markers of Silverfang territory fading until they disappeared completely. By the time she noticed, it was already too late. She had crossed into unclaimed land, the kind of forest that belonged to no pack and was avoided by nearly all of them for a very simple reason. Rogue wolves. Elena stopped running, her ears pinning back as she took in her surroundings. The trees here were older, thicker, blotting out most of the moonlight. The air carried unfamiliar scents, sharp and wild, wolves that did not answer to any alpha she knew. Her heart began to pound. She had heard the stories, the same ones every pup grew up hearing, about wolves who lived outside pack law, who took what they wanted from anyone foolish enough to wander into their territory alone. A twig snapped somewhere behind her. Elena spun around, her half-shifted body trembling as she tried to bare her teeth in a display of threat that felt hollow even to her. The darkness around her seemed to breathe, and slowly, one by one, pairs of glowing eyes emerged from between the trees. She counted 6 of them, each pair belonging to a wolf larger than any she had seen in her own pack, their forms sleek and silent as they began to circle her. She backed against the trunk of an old oak, waiting for the attack she was certain would come. It never did. Instead, the 6 wolves parted, lowering their heads in a gesture of clear submission, as a 7th figure stepped through the gap they had made. He was enormous, his fur black as the space between stars, and he moved with an unhurried, effortless authority, the kind that came from a creature who had never once needed to prove his strength to anyone. He shifted mid-stride, fur melting into skin, 4 legs becoming 2, until where the great black wolf had stood there was now a man, tall, broad-shouldered, covered in the pale lines of old scars that told stories Elena could not begin to guess. His eyes, when they found hers, were a deep and startling gold, and they did not move away. Silverfang colors, he said, his voice low and even, carrying easily across the small clearing. You are far from your border, little wolf. Elena forced herself to straighten, refusing to let the fear crawling up her throat show on her face. I got lost, she said, proud of how steady her voice sounded despite everything. The man tilted his head slightly, studying her with an intensity that made her want to look away, and yet somehow could not. You did not get lost, he said. You were abandoned. It was not a question, and Elena found she had no answer to give him. His gaze drifted, briefly, to the mark on the side of her neck, the mating mark that should have glowed a soft gold to show a mate's protection, extended even across great distances. Instead, it sat dull and grey, lifeless as a coal gone cold. Something dark passed behind the man's golden eyes, there and gone in an instant, like a storm cloud crossing the moon. By your mate, he finished quietly. Elena said nothing, because there was nothing to say that would not humiliate her further. The silence between them stretched, filled only by the soft sounds of the forest at night, and the 6 wolves standing patiently at their master's back. Finally, the man exhaled, a sound that seemed to hold back something far more dangerous than a simple sigh. I am Kael, he said, Alpha King of the Northern Wolves. This forest, and every wolf that runs through it, answers to me. He paused, his eyes never leaving hers. And I do not leave anything of value lying alone in the dark to be picked apart by scavengers. I am not yours to claim, Elena said, though her voice wavered slightly at the end, betraying the fear she was trying so hard to hide. To her surprise, Kael did not look offended. Instead, the corner of his mouth curved upward, not into mockery, but into something far more unsettling. Interest. Genuine, quiet interest. The kind she had never once seen directed at her, not even from the mate fate itself had chosen for her. No, he agreed, stepping closer, close enough now that she could feel the warmth radiating from him despite the cold night air. Not yet. He extended his hand toward her, palm open, patient in a way that felt entirely foreign to everything Elena had ever known about alpha wolves. Around them, his 6 wolves fanned out silently, forming a loose but deliberate wall between Elena and the darker parts of the forest, as though shielding her from threats she could not even see. Your mate made a grave mistake tonight, Kael said, his voice low, one I suspect he will spend a very long time regretting. Elena stared at his outstretched hand, torn between every instinct telling her to run, and a quieter, more desperate part of her that was simply tired, tired of being left behind, tired of being made to feel small, tired of pretending that being someone's fated mate was the same as being wanted. Come with me, Elena of Silverfang, Kael said, as though he already knew her name, though she had never told it to him. Perhaps her reputation, however small and quiet, had traveled further than she realized. Let me show you what it feels like to be protected by someone who actually wants you standing beside him. For a long moment, Elena did not move. The wind rustled through the bare branches above them, carrying the distant, faint sound of the moon hunt still going on somewhere behind her, without her, exactly as it had every year since her bonding to Damon. She thought of Damon's back disappearing into the trees without so much as a glance. She thought of the whispers that would already be spreading through her pack by morning. She thought of the year after year of small cruelties she had endured, all in the name of a fate she had never truly chosen and could never seem to escape. And then she looked up at Kael, this alpha king who ruled a forest most wolves feared to enter, who stood before her not with demands or scorn, but with something that looked remarkably like patience, and perhaps even respect. Slowly, Elena reached out and placed her hand in his. His fingers closed around hers, warm and steady, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, Elena felt something other than fear settle over her. Kael did not pull her forward roughly, the way Damon so often did when he deigned to touch her at all. Instead, he simply held her hand, as though the gesture itself was enough, as though he had all the time in the world. You will not be harmed here, he said, his eyes steady on hers. Not by my wolves, and not by anyone who follows me. You have my word. And if my pack comes looking for me? Elena asked, some old instinct of loyalty still tugging at her despite everything. Kale's expression did not change, but something in his golden eyes hardened, just slightly. Then they will find that the mate they abandoned in the forest is no longer theirs to command. He paused. Unless that is not what you want. Elena thought of the pack house she had returned to every night for the past year, the cold looks from the other wolves, the emptiness of a mate bond that had never once been reciprocated the way it should have been. She thought of Damon, running ahead without her, again and again, until she had simply stopped expecting anything different. No, she said quietly, surprising herself with how certain she sounded. That is not what I want. Kale nodded once, as though her answer settled something important, though he did not press her further. Instead, he turned, his 6 wolves falling into step around them as he began to lead her deeper into the northern forest, toward whatever waited for her there. They walked for a while in silence, the kind that did not feel uncomfortable, only new. Elena found herself stealing glances at the Alpha King beside her, trying to understand a creature who held so much power and yet seemed to carry it so lightly, without the need to prove it at every turn the way Damon always had. "Why help me?" she finally asked. "You do not know me." Kale considered the question for a long moment before answering. "I know enough," he said. "I know what it looks like when someone has been made to feel unwanted for a long time. I have seen it before, in wolves who came to me broken by their own packs, believing they deserved nothing better." His jaw tightened slightly. "I do not believe that is true. Not for them, and not for you." Elena did not know what to say to that, so she said nothing at all, letting his words settle over her instead, strange and warm, in a way she had almost forgotten was possible. By the time they reached the edge of Kale's territory, where torchlight flickered from a great stone hall nestled among the trees, the first hints of dawn were beginning to color the sky. Elena paused at the threshold, looking back the way they had come, toward the forest that led, eventually, back to Silverfang land, back to Damon, back to the life she had known. She did not feel the pull to return that she once might have. "You do not have to decide anything tonight," Kale said, seeming to sense her hesitation. "You are safe here for as long as you need. There is no pressure, and no expectation. Only shelter, for as long as you want it." Elena looked at him, at this Alpha King who had found her abandoned and afraid in the dark, and who had offered her nothing but safety and choice, 2 things she had not realized, until this very moment, how desperately she had been missing. "Thank you," she said softly. Kale inclined his head, golden eyes warm in the growing light of dawn. "Welcome to the Northern Pack, Elena," he said. "Whatever comes next, you will not face it alone." And as she stepped past the threshold into the warmth of the great hall, surrounded by wolves who looked at her not with scorn or disappointment, but with quiet acceptance, Elena felt something inside her chest loosen for the first time in longer than she could remember. The moon hunt that had begun in abandonment ended, instead, in the first true moment of belonging she had ever known.